GUI to send the new ETA hen bin filed to your console over the network using the PS5's IP address on port No. 290, and that will get ETA hen up and running on your system with the Blu-ray exploit. The other option is the LUI exploit on those firmware, where essentially you can run one of the games that has the modified save file to run the LUI loader. Once that's loaded, you can then send the LUI file from your computer over the network to the console to execute on the PS5 that will run the kernel exploit. Once that's done, you can then send the ELF loader LUI file to get the ELF loader running on the PS5, at which point, again, you can then close out of the disk and then simply send the ETA and payload again from your computer using a payload as we injector, just showed with the Blu-ray exploit. And that will get ETA hen loaded on your system with the LUI exploit. And finally, of course, if you're on an older firmware like I'm on for 0.03 right now, but of course, you can do this on any firmware from 5.50 you can just head over to the web browser version of the exploit here. Let it download the latest cache, which will include the new version of ETA hen. Wait for the caching process to finish, and then once it says the site has been updated, we can hit options and reload the page. Cache is now up to date. You can then run the jailbreak, and then of course with UMTX2. It only takes a couple of seconds here with the web browser, the ELF loader. And then once we get this message to disappear, we can then run the ETA hen payload, which has now been updated to version 2.1b. So we can just select it here, and that will get the new version running on our console. Do notice you get a lot less notifications popping up on screen when loading this compared to previous versions. But there we go. We now have ETA hen up and running, so if we head over to our debug settings, you can see we have our ETA hen toolbox up and running there's the final notification that's popped up. Version 2.1b by Lightning Mods is all up and running here. So with all of this, there's been a few changes. So if we go into cheats work in progress, there's now an option here to cache and reload the cheats list. So this is basically for if you've already got like the cheats downloaded, and then maybe you add an additional cheat through FTP or something like that, then it doesn't actually get refreshed. So instead of having to download and update you can just essentially reload the cheats list. So any new cheats that you add will appear once you refresh. So it's more of just a way to refresh the cheats. If you add any additional ones in without having to restart ETA or any of that kind of stuff. So pretty handy option. That has just been included in there for convenience. So on top of that, we have a few other options. If we head into utilities, we now have this beta pause case stuff option. If you saw my earlier news update where I showed the initial payload for this, that allows you to pause KStuff. So this just includes this into ETA hen. So this makes a huge difference to performance. Loading times can be greatly improved. It can reduce things like frame drops and general performance issues that you're having with any of your packages or your PS5 game can be greatly improved by using this option. So before starting the game, KStuff must be enabled. And when closing the game, KStuff must be enabled. But in between that time, when you're actually running, you can disable KStuff to get better performance. That is the general idea there. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this works. So of course, if I go to run one of my games, I've got KStuff enabled. We'll run a CT or Nitro field and we'll get this up and running. And there we go. So now that the game has loaded, I can then back out here to the home screen. Head into our debug settings. Go back to our utilities, and now we can disable KStuff. So if you pause after opening a game, be sure to resume before closing it. So just exactly what I said there before. Go ahead and pause it there. Go back onto the game. And because I've already loaded the game while KStuff was running, the game still works. And it should run a lot faster and smoother and with shorter loading times now that KStuff is disabled. But if I want to then close this game and launch another game, I need to make sure that I then quickly head back over into our utilities section, and then unpause KStuff, so renable KStuff. And then I should be able to close my game without it crashing or causing any issues. Then I can load other games and homebrew apps, and I can also disable KStuff to get better performance. So I do recommend doing that. It may seem like a bit of an annoyance to have to keep disabling it and re-enabling it again. But the performance gains that you get by disabling KStuff are definitely worth it in most cases, so I highly recommend using that option, especially if you notice longer loading times or stutters or lag or any kind of issues with running your PS4 or PS5 fake packages. Definitely try with KStuff disabled because it could fix a lot of those problems. So definitely recommended there. on top of that PS5 which was currently disabled in the previous version. For 5.x firmwares, that's now been re-enabled and working. So PS5 debug should now work with an ETA if you're on a 5.x firmware, whereas it was not previously. So that is another improvement there. Now, another hidden option that's been added in here to disable case stuff completely. So if you want to load ETA hen on its own without case stuff whatsoever. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, if you just want access to the plugins and the cheats, but without case stuff running at all. If you're just running retail games, and you don't want the performance impact of case stuff at all, without having to pause and unpause it, you can disable case stuff completely by just putting a file on the root of a USB drive called no_case stuff. And with no file extension or anything, and then plug that USB drive into your PS5. Then when you go to load ETA, it will read that file from the USB, and it will load without case stuff enabled. So whether you're just testing or you just don't like using case stuff, and you just run retail games, and you just want things like the cheats and plugins to work, then you can actually run at a hand without case stuff if you wish. But for most people, they'll be wanting case stuff running, and you have the option to pause it and unpause it anyway. Option is there if you want it. So another improvement is the time it takes to load the ETA hen toolbox itself. So you have this option that was introduced in the last update, which allows you to disable the ETA hen toolbox on startup. If you just want the regular debug settings when you're running ETA hen instead of this custom toolbox menu, then you can disable this option. I believe it's also necessary for rest mode or to improve rest mode stability when recovering from rest mode. When running ETA hen to prevent it from crashing or shutting down. When you recover from rest mode to continue running ETA hen without having to reboot, then having this option disabled is recommended for that. And of course, if you recover from rest mode with this option disabled, you lose access to the toolbox here, but you can renable it from items flow. The problem was, it would take a really long time to renable the toolbox again. So if we go ahead and enter rest mode here and just do a little test. So we'll go and enter rest mode. Okay, so my system entered rest mode. I'm now recovering from rest mode here. As you can see there, we get ETA hen coming out of rest mode, restarting all of the services. And this is the kind of the recommended way that you should by disabling that option, which means now we're just back to the regular debug settings. But ETA hen and case stuff and everything are still running here. So that is kind of what is recommended to allow rest mode to work. And in my case here, you can see it has worked just fine. But now we don't have access, of course, to the toolbox. So if I want to get the toolbox I have to once again go into items flow. So we'll go ahead and run items flow game manager. Okay, so once we're in items flow, we can hit the options button, and then we can head down to ETA toolbox options and inject/re-add the toolbox. And this is the thing that took a really long time before. In the previous version, it could take up to a minute, maybe longer than a minute in most cases, in order for it to reload the toolbox. But this time here, let's see how long it takes. So it still says up to 2 minutes, because this is the older version of the items flow, which still has the message saying it'll take 2 minutes. But as you can see, just a couple of seconds and then we can also renable toolbox auto start, and we should be all good. So if we exit out of items flow right now and then head back over to settings, debug settings, and boom, the toolbox is back. So it only takes a few seconds, like what was that, 2 or 3 a bit longer. Maybe like 5 to 10 seconds there to re-enable the toolbox. And it's now back up and running again after recovering from rest mode. And we didn't have to reload the whole jailbreak again. So using rest mode can definitely be a godsend, instead of having to restart the console and reload the jailbreak. So a few other changes that have been made in this new version. We have added more in-depth errors to the direct package version installer. 2, we have a few fixes for development kit consoles, as well as fixed K-log auto starting, even when it's disabled in the toolbox/config removed, creating unnecessary files when starting ETA, which should slightly speed up start times. We also have updated PS5 debug to renable PS5 debug for 5.x firmware. So if you're on 5.x PS5 debug should work as now, well as adding a check to see if downloading the store or reloading the cheats cache is already in progress before starting a new operation. And of course, the ability to disable K stuff by adding that file to the root of the USB can drive also be placed in the data/ETA hen folder instead of a USB drive to disable K stuff when loading ETA. That's another option. And finally added back the package installer patches 3.x and for .x, which may have been disabled in some of the previous test builds that have been going around. So anyway, those are all of the main changes there in this version of ETA Hen. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like.